I never had a fondness for playing cards. During college, some pals attempted to school me in poker, but I could never grasp it. Consequently, I never bothered to learn the hierarchy of hands or the ins and outs of Texas Hold'em or whatever it's called there. It simply didn't pique my interest. Fed up with constantly losing money to my cutthroat buddies, I gave up playing altogether. In contrast, my wife Kathy adored poker and excelled at it. She participated in local tournaments with success, though she mostly played with her regular circle of friends. They convened once or twice monthly at Larry and Sandy's suburban townhouse. Interestingly, Kathy had known them since college, Katie being her longtime friend and Sandy her former roommate. The group comprised Larry, Sandy, Kathy, Paul, Brian, and Terry. Though present myself, Paul's wife Mary, and Brian's wife Allison refrained from playing, opting instead to watch TV in the living room. There used to be another player, Wes, but he got the boot for cheating. While I didn't object to Kathy's involvement, it was her crowd, not mine. Mary and Allison were fine, and we were even growing close. However, the others were, at best, tolerable. Interacting with them voluntarily was beyond my imagination, particularly Mark, who was an outright idiot and whom I frankly detested. Terry and Mark felt isolated. Terry, reserved and modest, didn't seem skilled at poker. Mark, on the other hand, was insufferable. If we crossed paths in public, I'd likely ignore him. His demeanor, loud, offensive, and self-absorbed, led to more than one disagreement between us. I tolerated him solely because he belonged to my wife's poker circle, encountering him only during their games. My main gripe with poker nights was how intensely competitive Katie became. If she lost, it cast a shadow over her mood the following day. Despite my attempts to address this, she dismissed my concerns. Lately, she'd been pushing for weekly poker gatherings, a prospect I wasn't keen on, a sentiment shared by Mary and Allison. Thankfully, this staved off the weekly poker plan, for now. One Saturday night at Larry and Sandy's, tensions ran high, particularly for Katie. As the night wore on, I intermittently checked on her, only to be met with her frustration. Eventually, well past the usual end time, I heard commotion from the dining room where they played. Stepping in, I caught Mark's assertion about a bet, backed by Larry's reminder of the rules. Katie reluctantly agreed, signaling her turn to play. "What's going on?" Mark asked with a smirk and a hostile glare. "Katie lost all her money, leaving me the pleasure of the final hand. She's lost, now it's time to settle up. Apologies," Katie assured. "She wouldn't do this to anyone else but me. Hey, buddy, she made a bet and lost. That's the rule." It was at that moment Katie resolved to take charge of her fate. "Henry, it's fine. I lost. I'll pay," Katie conceded. "No, Katie. You owe me loyalty. Trying to settle for less would be cheating me," Henry protested. Mark's behavior only confirmed my suspicion of his character. "You're witnessing this, so it's not betrayal," he argued. Fed up, I snapped, "Shut up, you fool! This isn't about you!" Turning to Katie, I urged, "Let's go. We're leaving." Katie hesitated. "Henry, I hate to do this, but I must. If I don't, I'll be kicked out." My response was firm. "I don't care if you're expelled. I don't care if you never play poker again." I approached Went, calling out, "Hey guys, I need your help." Katie glanced at Paul and Brian, signaling toward me with a tilt of her head. As I moved closer to her, Paul and Brian grabbed me from behind. I struggled, but Larry stepped in, assisting them in restraining me. "Are you serious? You idiots!" I exclaimed. "You're going to hold me down while my wife does this in front of me?" Larry responded calmly. "She made a bet and knew the consequences. She's choosing to stay, so she pays up." He chuckled. "Don't worry, Mark won't be around much longer. He really was an idiot." Mark then advanced, ending up directly in front of Katie, who was kneeling. "Catherine, if you go through with this, it's over," I stated calmly, emphasizing her full name. "Stop being dramatic, Henry," she retorted. As she leaned forward, I let out a loud scream, halting her. "Hold on a moment," I interjected. She paused, meeting my gaze. "I just want to be clear. Is everyone okay with this?" Silence filled the room until Mark stepped forward, dismissing my concerns. "Come on, he's spoiling the mood," he declared. Katie, leaning forward, intervened. "Okay, that's enough. I can't bear to see it anymore. Let me go, and I'll leave." With a burgeoning plan in mind, I realized it wasn't over between Katie and me. I needed to exact revenge on this fool. Katie paused, signaling to the men restraining me. They released their hold, and I calmly approached Katie. Pretending to struggle with my wedding ring, I extended my left hand with fingers spread wide, while my right hand clenched into a fist. Katie knelt determinedly to my left, while Mark grinned menacingly to my right. I warned you, Katie. If you go through with this, we're done, I reiterated, standing beside them and locking eyes with her. You went ahead and did it, Catherine, and with such a fool, I muttered. As I uttered this, I struck Mark in the nose with the back of my right fist, prompting him to shield his face with both hands. Swiftly, I pivoted to his right, delivering another blow with my left fist as he cowered, causing him to topple backward. His trousers and underwear pooled around his ankles, leading to a clumsy fall onto his backside and then flat onto the floor, landing between the dining table and a large antique cabinet. Fueled by anger, I acted on impulse. Katie stumbled backward, landing on her rear, while I loomed over Mark, positioned at his feet. To my right stood a spacious dining table, accommodating 8 people comfortably, with 3 chairs on each side. On my left loomed an imposing antique wardrobe, measuring at least 6 feet in length. Its oak base stood approximately 30 inches tall, adorned with numerous drawers and doors, while the top half, another 40 inches higher, boasted mirrored glass doors enclosing various collectibles such as china, Hummel figurines, and snow globes. Grabbing the top of the antique cabinet, I knew toppling it over wasn't feasible, but I hoped to instill fear. The weighty base, filled with contents, likely exceeded 300 pounds, while the top half, supported by a wooden frame, housed delicate items. Unfortunately for Mark, Larry had never properly secured the top half to the base. As I tugged on it, the top half of the cabinet teetered over. Though I hadn't intended to bring it down on Mark, I was oddly satisfied with the outcome. The ensuing crash echoed like an explosion. Fortunately for Mark, the space between the cabinet stand and the table prevented it from landing on him. Instead, the lower portion remained on the stand, while the upper part collided with the dining table. Regrettably for Mark, the contents of the cabinet cascaded forward, smashing through its glass doors. Shards of glass rained down on him, along with the items inside, resulting in numerous cuts. Thankfully, he shielded his bloodied face with his hands, preventing glass from injuring his broken nose or eyes. Unfortunately for Mark, when he hit the floor, his shirt rode up to his stomach due to his jeans and boxers being pulled down to his ankles, leaving his upper abdomen to his shins exposed. The scene unfolded rapidly, leaving everyone in stunned silence. In the midst of it all, I remained in improvisation mode. Pretending to be concerned, I circled the table where his head lay and loudly advised, "Don't touch him, get an ambulance." Upon reaching his head, I crouched so low that only he could hear me and whispered, "I hope you bleed. But if not, find me later and we'll discuss it. Just so you know, there's glass everywhere. I wouldn't move much if I were you." Sandy emerged from the kitchen announcing, "The ambulance is on its way. ETA is 5 minutes. Should we also call the police?" Katie and I responded simultaneously. She declined while I insisted, "Absolutely." Katie wasn't naive. She understood that involving the police meant filing a report and giving statements. Larry was furious. "Dude, you practically eliminated him and wrecked my cabinet. We need to call the cops," he argued. "I didn't try to eliminate him, but I agree we should call the police," I conceded. Personally, I'd welcome talking to them. "Isn't this like soliciting lovemaking for money?" I challenged. "I'll look into it. They'll never buy it," I continued. Larry countered. "Who do you think they'll believe? Me or the guy lying here half unclothed, who isn't married to any of the women?" I relented. "Maybe I'm wrong. Go ahead, call them. Do as you wish." "Please, call the police. I'll wait outside for the ambulance," I added. I circled the table and approached Katie, who was now kneeling beside Mark. Squatting down beside her, I removed my wedding ring and tossed it into the shattered glass near Mark's head. "You know what, Catherine? I don't think I'll be needing this anymore. If you want, you can fish it out of the glass." Confused, Katie looked at me with teary eyes and asked, "Cards next to his head? What are these? Extra cards?" "Wait, the guy you left your marriage for is a cheater? Are you kidding me?" I exclaimed. "Mark, you're an idiot. I almost betrayed my husband and you actually cheated?" There's a big difference between almost cheating and actually cheating. Deciding to address it later, I noted that Mark couldn't speak due to the shards of glass covering his face, with blood now splattered everywhere. "Stay here, Catherine. I'll go outside and meet the ambulance. They should be here any minute. I'll inform you when they arrive." I exited through the front door, hopped into my car, and drove off. 2 blocks down, I encountered an ambulance cruising slowly, scanning house numbers with its spotlight. Passing by, I continued on my way home. Upon arrival, I entered the house and commenced packing, anticipating the imminent arrival of the police. Gathering a small suitcase and a couple of duffel bags, I hastily tossed in essentials. Over the next few days, I completed my packing. Just as I was zipping up my suitcase, I heard Katie enter the front door, calling out, "Henry, where are you?" Ignoring her, I proceeded to leave the bedroom with my bags. "Oh, there you are," she exclaimed upon spotting me. "Henry, what are you doing? You don't have to leave," she pleaded. "God, you know." "Uh-oh," I began, addressing Mark. "I know what you did to me, Mark. What about Larry and Brian? Or do you only target married men? And you chose to kneel down instead of settling in cash. By the way, what was the bet?" Katie interjected. "Henry, stop it." Mark was the only exception, regardless of the stakes. It was a matter of principle. I didn't intend to have lovemaking with him. Plus, you intervened. "Did I stop you? You were already getting down to business," she retorted, deflecting the question. "I managed to prevent them from involving the police and retrieved your ring from the shattered glass." "I've said it before, I don't care. They should call the cops. Heck, I could have eliminated him." "Maybe I should confess to the police," I pondered aloud. "No, Henry, that's a bad idea," she cautioned. "We'll cover the damages ourselves. Screw them. I won't give them a cent." "When's your next poker night?" I inquired. "Not for a couple of weeks. Mark won't be invited back, so don't worry. We'll have time to recover," she assured. "Henry, where are you going?" she called out as I headed towards the door. By the time she finished speaking, I was already outside. Climbing into my car, I drove off while she stood at the front door shouting after me. Ignoring her, I drove several miles until I found a motel and booked a room for the night. I switched off my phone and spent the night staring at the ceiling. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep around 5 in the morning, awakening at 10. After showering, I paid for my stay until Wednesday at the front desk. Upon turning my phone back on, I found a dozen missed calls from Katie, along with another dozen from Allison and Mary. There were numerous messages from Katie explaining her actions and insisting it meant nothing to us. Despite regretting what happened, she tried to rationalize it, claiming it was merely a bet. I responded with a single text, suggesting she forward all her messages to her mother to gauge her perception of the situation. Then I turned off my phone again. I spent 2 hours on a park bench, followed by an hour wandering around the mall, and another hour on a different park bench. Later, I visited the supermarket and stocked up on junk food before returning to my motel room, spending the remainder of the night indulging in snacks and researching scams online. Exhausted by 10 o'clock, I drifted off to sleep. Monday morning, I attempted to focus on work, but my boss noticed my distraction and inquired about the issue. When I explained my family troubles, he suggested I take a few days off. He advised me to call on Wednesday to confirm if I needed additional time off for the rest of the week. As it was time to leave anyway, I decided to stop by the local bar and grill for a couple of beers and some better food than what I had purchased at the supermarket. Not wanting to engage with anyone, I retreated to the back of the restaurant and settled into a booth, regardless of my preference. Suddenly, 2 figures approached, neither of them the waitress. "Hey, Henry, mind if Allison and I join you?" one of them asked. I disregarded their presence and took a sip of ice water. "Are you mad at us too? What did we do?" they inquired. "Nothing. You two did absolutely nothing," I replied calmly. Mary and Allison slid into the booth across from me, with Allison speaking next. "Henry, if Mary and I didn't do anything, why are you upset with us? I know you're not keen on people playing poker with Katie, but I thought we were friends," she expressed. "I thought so too, but you didn't do anything. Seriously, you're both asking me this," I retorted sharply, keeping my voice level. "You stood by as your husband restrained me while my wife attended to another man without my consent. And you remained silent." The 2 of them sat in silence. "What kind of friends are you? At one point, I looked around, pleading for someone to intervene, and you two said nothing." "I didn't think she'd actually do it," Mary confessed. "I thought it was just a dumb joke. I couldn't believe she went through with it," Allison added, expressing her remorse. "She feels awful now. She's worried you might show these messages to her mom. You wouldn't, right?" "Not yet, but I will if necessary. Everyone knows how bad the situation was. We discussed it after you left and the ambulance took Mark away. Larry and Sandy assured they wouldn't involve the police. You'll just have to cover the damages," I explained. "Listen, Mary, I'm not paying anyone anything," I declared firmly. "Larry and Sandy may have helped Katie with her apparent gambling issue, but that doesn't excuse their involvement." Sandy stood by and watched while Larry actively restrained me while Katie destroyed our marriage just to avoid getting kicked out of the damn poker group. "Henry, she's a mess. Please try to forgive her," Mary pleaded. "I'm not sure she even wants forgiveness." She doesn't think she did anything wrong. She probably expects an apology from me for stopping her from settling her bet, I retorted. Suddenly, Allison had an idea. What if we level the playing field? What if you find someone who will satisfy you in return? I responded to her slowly and deliberately, as if explaining to a child. Consider this. We were in a room, presumably among friends. Then those very friends held me back so she could settle the bet. Now, to level the playing field, I must find a woman to please me. Essentially, I embarrass myself in front of her friends, and she simply hears that I retaliated. The image of her on her knees is seared into my memory. On the flip side, she may not even believe I got even. She could just pretend it didn't happen. But I saw it. There has to be a way to put an end to this. I hate seeing my friends endure nonsense, Mary. You claim not to want to see me hurt. But were you okay with how hurt I was on Saturday? You stood by while all this unfolded. I was suffering, yet you paid no heed. Friends don't do that. We're not friends. In my view, these two were as culpable as anyone else. I've been concocting a plan for a bit of payback. I just need to set it in motion. If someone had spoken up, I'm certain this wouldn't have occurred. You could have said something to your husbands. It might have sparked a confrontation, but it could have saved my marriage. It's time to offer them some hope, but I'm unsure if there's a way to level the playing field, as you suggest. I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea, I just don't see how. What if one of us does it? I glanced at Allison for about 10 seconds. What if it's both of you? Wait, you want us to even the score? Mary asked. I can't do this. Paul will be furious if he finds out. I understand perfectly, I quipped sarcastically. The guy who restrained me while my wife betrayed me. I see everything crystal clear. I'll do it, Allison volunteered, surprising both of us. You're right. We bear some responsibility, she admitted. I can't go along with this, Mary interjected. And it's unfair of you to put me in this position, Henry. If Allison is willing to assist, that should suffice. No, I countered. The bait has been set. Now it's time to reel them in. Neither of you means anything to me. This is part of the negotiation. I don't seek balance. I demand the scales tip in my favor. Mary pondered silently for about 2 minutes. The longer she deliberated, the more confident I grew in handling the situation. If we agree to this, will you forgive Katie? She asked finally. If you refuse, I won't even consider it. You won't tell Paul? She continued. I won't utter a word, I assured her. Technically, it wasn't a lie. I hadn't planned to verbalize it. With a motel room booked until Wednesday morning, I intended to hold out until the weekend before deciding whether to return home or seek a new place. I can't believe this is happening, Mary exclaimed. Welcome to my world, I retorted sarcastically. Look, if it's that awful for you, just let it go, I suggested. That's not the issue, Henry. I care about you and you're a good guy. If I weren't married, I'd be with you in a heartbeat. But I am married. You're pushing me into cheating on my husband, Mary explained. Mary, I'm not forcing you into anything, I clarified. I know. All right. If it helps you move past what my husband did, then I'll do it. Either way, it's his fault. If he wasn't an idiot, I wouldn't be in this situation. As for me, she can justify it however she wants. It's my way of getting back at her damn husband, so I don't care, I thought to myself. Okay, let's meet tomorrow evening in my room at 6 o'clock. I'll bring some food and wine, I proposed. Both women rose from the table and departed, engaged in conversation. They seemed eager for tomorrow night and not at all upset. Am I the only one who takes marriage vows seriously? I know what you're thinking. Here I am, a married guy planning to date 2 married women, all while preaching about the sanctity of marriage, I reflected. But she cheated on me. By doing that, she disrespected and embarrassed me. Our marriage was already null and void. I no longer honored those vows. It was all over except for the paperwork and the women I was about to meet. They and their husbands were partly responsible, so to hell with them. I'll never understand those people whose spouses cheat, yet they insist on upholding the sanctity of marriage. Blah, blah, blah. My motto is, what's good for the goose? I acknowledge that she didn't intend to betray me, but it wasn't hard for her to agree to it when her coveted spot in the poker group was at stake. Yes, I may be unreasonable. Yes, she needs assistance with her gambling issue. However, she may not seek help until she hits rock bottom. Maybe divorce is that rock bottom. The following day, Tuesday, I returned to my hometown, ensuring Katie wasn't present, and entered to gather some new belongings. It was tough walking through my house, seeing remnants of my life everywhere, knowing it would never be the same. Each time sentimentality crept in, I envisioned her kneeling in front of Mark. The anger remained potent, so I opted not to take anything that might remind me of her. I grabbed some electronics, my laptop, iPad, camera, along with basic tools and clothing. I resolved to start apartment hunting after leaving and return later for the remaining items. I didn't need much. Departing the house, I scouted for apartments and found an affordable furnished one-bedroom unit available for monthly rent. I could move in any time after Saturday. After finalizing the lease, I went for lunch and prepared to meet the girls. At Best Buy, I purchased an Apple SD card reader and a dozen SD cards. I also acquired the cheapest wireless color printer they had. Then I visited a liquor store and picked up a couple of bottles of wine I knew Mary and Allison favored. I returned to the motel room and arranged my belongings to create a cluttered appearance, strategically placing the 35mm camera for an unobstructed view of the bed. Due to the room's disarray, the camera remained inconspicuous. Around 5:30, I ordered appetizers from a nearby restaurant, which arrived just before 6. At 6:15, a gentle knock sounded on the door. Peering through the peephole, I ensured it was the women and not irate husbands. I wasn't particularly fearful of my own husband, but I preferred not to be caught off guard again. I activated the camera to record and welcomed the women inside, offering them wine. Initially hesitant, they eventually accepted, reasoning that a bit of liquid courage wouldn't hurt. "Ladies, we don't have to do this. We can simply enjoy wine, food, and each other's company. You both know I would never pressure you into anything you're not comfortable with," I asserted. "I understand, Henry," Allison replied. "You're such a kind person. It's a shame Brian isn't as considerate as you. Katie truly lucked out." "Mary and I have discussed this since we parted ways yesterday. You were correct. Our silence was a failure on our part. By not speaking up, we were taking action. I deeply regret our inaction." "I appreciate that. I just want to understand where I went wrong," I replied. "What do you mean, what you did wrong, Mary?" It's hard to believe Katie made such a sudden decision. If she intended to involve me, she should have done so before I arrived. I simply want to know what I did to make her think this was acceptable. "Henry, I truly believe Saturday was the first time something like this happened. It's impossible to keep something like this a secret. The truth always surfaces," Mary explained, unsure how accurate her statement was. "All right, let's get started," Allison interjected eagerly. "You go to the bed and stand." Following her instructions, I positioned myself as she directed. "I'll undress you now. Stay still. No hands. I want to do this myself." Meanwhile, Mary settled into the office chair by the desk, wearing a broad smile. It made me wonder if these two had experience with such encounters. Mary positioned herself perfectly to record everything on video. Allison unbuttoned my shirt, sliding it down my arms, leaving them extended outwards. With a wide grin, she ran her hands over my chest. She then untied my shoes, having me lift each foot for removal, followed by taking off my socks. Proceeding, she unbuckled my belt, unbuttoned my jeans, and pulled them down over my hips. Once my jeans were off, Allison knelt in front of me. Though I wanted to hasten the process, I restrained myself, allowing her to proceed at her pace, which was remarkable. Fortunately, Brian was lucky as it didn't take long. When she finished, she knelt back and looked up at me. Tenderly, I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "That was incredible, Allison." "Absolutely incredible." "Mary, I'll need a moment to recharge the batteries," I quipped. We settled down, indulging in some of the food and wine we had brought along. During our meal, we revisited the events of Saturday night after I left Larry and Sandy's. Allison spoke up first. "You were there when Katie discovered the cards near Mark's shoulder and accused him of cheating." Initially, he struggled to speak as glass rained down on him, fearing it might enter his injured nose or mouth. Mary chimed in next. His reaction when the ambulance arrived was priceless, albeit delayed. It took a bit longer than expected for them to pry his hands away from his face. He looked dreadful, to say the least. "So much for, 'I'll go meet the ambulance,'" Allison remarked, mimicking me with a smirk. I replied, feigning forgetfulness. "Must have slipped my mind." Unfortunately, he managed to pull through. Mary shuddered at the memory. "Then he goes on about not cheating, claiming Katie owes him a bet and how he'll seek retribution. Blah, blah, blah," Allison added. "And the blood, oh, the blood," she continued. "It was everywhere. The EMTs didn't even attempt to clean him up. They just covered him and whisked him away." Mary took matters into her own hands. "Katie insisted she wouldn't settle their bet unless he could prove he didn't cheat." At this point, I interjected, "So if Mark proves he's innocent, she'll still honor the bet?" A significant pause followed as the girls fell silent. Then Mary resumed. I don't think there's much cause for concern right now. Are you absolutely certain? I responded. As I mentioned, Mark sustained numerous cuts all over his body. Most were minor, but he had a couple of deeper cuts on his abdomen requiring stitches. He remained hospitalized until Monday to have all the glass removed. Larry visited him at the hospital and had a conversation with him, Allison added. He was livid, threatening to not only collect the bet from Katie, but also to engage in carnal activities with her right in front of you. Mary intervened once more, stating, I highly doubt Mark will be welcome back given his cheating. However, Larry's also upset with you. He believes you're liable for the damaged curio cabinet and is frustrated that his homeowner's insurance will need to cover the hospital expenses. Additionally, he expects you to reimburse for the broken items in the cabinet. Mary, relay my message. Inform Larry and Sandy that I'll only settle for $0.10 if instructed by the judge. Legal documents and testimonies will be provided to support this. My statement will depict the situation as if I stumbled upon a full-blown orgy, and when I intervened to stop my wife's involvement, I was unlawfully restrained by Larry, Brian, and Paul. It will include the names of all participants and witnesses present. Copies will be distributed to neighbors, family, friends, colleagues, and even churches attended by anyone involved. If possible, I'll reach out to Oprah and share the story with the world. We sat in silence for about half a minute until Mary exclaimed, All right, it's my turn, let's do this. Sure, but I want both of you unclothed too, I insisted. We don't have to be undressed for this, Allison chuckled. I know we don't have to, but I feel a bit awkward, I responded. Forget about it, Mary exclaimed. We've come this far. What's the difference? With that, she undressed and Allison followed suit. I stood at the edge of the bed once more, and this time it was Mary who knelt down without hesitation. I was trying to distract myself from the situation and prolong the process when Allison rose from her chair, pushed me onto the bed, leaving Mary on her knees. I landed on my back as Allison jumped onto the bed. After about 5 minutes, it seemed to be winding down when Mary interjected, All right, it's my turn now. Allison, move over so I can join. Allison giggled, rolled aside, and Mary took her place. Eventually, Mary rolled off and lay beside me. So I asked, Have you done this before? We had our moments. You know we went to college together, right? Well, we had a few experiences, Mary recounted. That's right, Mary, Allison chuckled. A few times, Mary corrected, laughing. More like 100, Mary added before saying, Okay, it was fun, but I should head out. Henry, I hope this helps tip the scales in your favor. Please call me tomorrow and let me know what you think. I really hope you two can get through this. I don't want to lose you as friends. Allison chimed in, Henry, we're truly sorry we didn't speak up when everything was happening. Please call me tomorrow so we can talk. And if you need to talk later, you can call me anytime. Just to be clear, this was probably the only solution, I stated. Probably? Mary questioned. Come on, Mary, that's all we've been discussing since last night. You know we'll do it again. We just need to be more discreet than doing it in front of everyone during a poker game. Agreed? Agreed, I chuckled. We'll talk tomorrow. I'll call you someday. With that, the girls left, and I began working on the video I had made. I edited it down to the risque parts and printed out some compromising still photos of both women. Then I copied the edited video onto the remaining SD cards and prepared 9 identical envelopes, each containing an SD card and several explicit photos of the girls. Although it would have been obvious to anyone familiar with us, I cropped the photos and blurred the video to conceal my face. Afterward, I went to bed and quickly fell asleep. Wednesday morning, I woke up early, turned my phone back on, and noticed another dozen missed calls and messages from Katie. I didn't listen to or read them, but I also didn't delete them. I called my boss and informed him I'd be taking the rest of the week off, then returned home after Katie had left for work to pack up more of my tools and personal belongings. During lunch, Katie called me again. This time, I answered the call curtly, saying, "What?" Her response was delayed as she seemed taken aback that I had actually picked up. "Oh my God, Henry, please don't hang up. Where are you? We need to talk. We can work through this. Please just talk to me. Where did you stop? Please come home so we can resolve this. Please." Interrupting her, I said, "Katie, just listen for a moment. We'll meet on Saturday. I'll be there at 6 p.m. Make sure everyone who was with Larry and Sandy is there, except your guy. If he shows up, I'll deal with him again. He's not my guy, Henry. Besides, he's not really up for going out right now. As you say, Saturday at 6 o'clock. This isn't a party, it's a discussion. You and your friends can try to convince me why I shouldn't divorce you." I haven't listened to your messages, so be prepared for what you have to say. Tell your friends not to be late. Henry, please don't jeopardize our marriage over a trivial debt. When's the next poker night? Not sure. Maybe in a couple more weeks. You don't have to attend if you don't want to. See you on Saturday. All right. Henry, I love you. Please come back home. See you on Saturday. She simply couldn't grasp it. She believed the issue was merely my exaggerated reaction to what she perceived as fulfilling her obligation. She failed to perceive the larger picture. She genuinely didn't recognize her problem. Honoring the poker bet seemed more crucial to her than upholding our marriage vows. She hasn't reached her lowest point yet. The remainder of the week passed relatively calmly. I went to Walmart and purchased items necessary for my new apartment's bathroom, kitchen, and bedroom. I ended up buying more items than anticipated. Then I checked into a motel for the night. My evenings were spent researching divorce. We didn't have children, and with the house sale, we could each expect about $15,000. Our debts were minimal, and our incomes were similar. It should be relatively straightforward. On Saturday afternoon, I messaged Katie, requesting her to text me when everyone had gathered. I didn't want to endure an awkward silence while waiting for someone to arrive or have to rehash everything if someone was late. At 5:45, she messaged that everyone was already assembled and waiting in the dining room. At 5:55, I rang the doorbell of our house. Honey, it's your house. No need to ring the doorbell, Katie mentioned, opening the door. As you wish, I replied, passing by her. As I stepped into the dining room, I carried a small duffel bag stuffed with envelopes. All the dining furniture was passed down by Grandma Katie. The table was quite spacious for 10 people, with 4 chairs on each side and 1 at each end. Upon my arrival, 3 empty seats were beside me. Larry occupied the far right seat, while Sandy sat on the left with his back turned. To Sandy's left were 3 vacant seats beside Larry's right. Facing me were Paul, then Brian, followed by Mary, and finally Allison. Positioned at the head of the table to the left sat Terry. Katie brushed past me and settled in the middle of the 3 empty seats, hoping I'd take the seat next to her. I headed to the left end of the table where Terry was seated and stated, "This is my spot." Katie suggested, "You could sit next to me, Henry. Let's bet her on BJ that I'll sit here. Who knows, it might lead to something." Katie, put your phone on record. I've got a hunch you'll need it someday. Without a word, Terry stood and shifted to the other side of Katie. An empty seat was to my right, where I placed my gym bag. Katie activated the recording app on her iPhone and positioned it on the table. Taking my seat, I surveyed the table. Following an uneasy silence, I addressed the gathering. All right, we all know why we're here. I'm contemplating divorcing Catherine. If any of you care to persuade me otherwise, now's your chance. Terry, why don't you start? Look, Henry, I may not be the best person to advise on this. My wife cheated on me, and it led to our divorce. I'm truly sorry you're going through this. Clearly, Terry hadn't come prepared for the meeting. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate your candor. I might have more questions later. I glanced around at the faces seated at the table. Larry, what's your take on this? I inquired. It's no issue for me. She adores you, and she's gorgeous. Did you expect her to be a saint when you met her? No, I responded, but I hoped she'd aspire to be one. Would you be okay if Sandy entertained other men after we got together? Larry fell silent, and Sandy squirmed in her chair. With my trademark sarcasm and purely in jest, I quipped, So, how long have you two been openly cheating on each other? Sandy blushed, and jaws dropped all around except for Larry's, who shot me a piercing look but remained silent. Katie blurted out, Sandy, really? Suddenly, Sandy had an honesty outburst. We only did it 3 times. I hate it, but Larry insists we continue. I want to stop. I despise this. All right, Sandy, I responded calmly. Why don't you and Catherine discuss this later? You shouldn't feel pressured to do anything you're not comfortable with. You know what an idiot you are, Larry erupted. I warned Katie when she started dating you, and you couldn't handle poker, that you were an idiot and she should dump you. She should have left you long ago. You wrecked thousands of dollars worth of stuff in my house because your wife honored the bet. Maybe I should just trash everything here. Come on, I replied calmly. All this furniture belonged to your friend Catherine's grandmother. It means nothing to me. He sank back into his chair, breathing heavily, his glare fixed on me like a dagger. Paul, Brian, any input from you guys? Listen, man, Paul started. None of us want to see our friends split up. I mean, you guys have been part of our circle for years, I interjected. No, Paul, you're not friends with us. You're friends with Catherine, and I'm her husband. But you are friends with my wife, he argued. That's what I thought. And then she just stood there silently while you 3 held me down, and my wife knelt in front of the other guy. But Mary didn't do anything. It was us. I glanced at Mary and Allison, who avoided my gaze and stared at the table. It seemed this conversation didn't unfold as they had hoped. Answer me, Paul. You walk into a bar and spot your buddy Brian's wife in the far corner, on her knees in front of another guy. What do? You look. Do you call Brian and hope he arrives in time? Do you step in to stop her? Now imagine you're at the bar and you spot Brian in the same position. What do? Are you calling Allison? The thing is, I already know the answers. If it's Brian's wife, you intervene and inform Brian. If Brian's the one in the situation, you probably stay put and maybe even join in. Allison won't hear about it from you because Brian is your friend and Allison is your friend's wife. And what about you, Brian? Do you think I'm exaggerating? Brian remained silent. You see, the issue here is that Katie is your friend, not me. If Katie were to attack me, you wouldn't care because I'm just your friend's husband. I'm not your friend. If I hadn't walked into this room, none of you would have said a word to me. You'd all be thinking, all right, the ice is broken. Next time, I'll be the one making a bet with her. I glanced at Katie. When did you lose respect for me? What do you mean, honey? I respect you more than anyone else I've ever known. When did I first tell you that this was acceptable? Well, I never claimed it was, she replied softly. How many times did this occur before last week? What? Never? Why are you so surprised by this question? Why should I trust you? If I hadn't witnessed it, would you have informed me? Would you wait until we got home and casually mention, hey, honey, something odd happened at the card game tonight? That's the issue, Katie. You were ready to jeopardize our marriage, but not your cherished spot in the poker group. I came second to these idiots. I can't reconcile with that. I turned to Brian and Paul. You guys knew Katie would prioritize her damn poker spot over her marriage, and you encouraged her instead of reasoning with her. I addressed Brian and Paul, then turned to them. What would you do if you had to watch your wives with another man? They smirked and exchanged glances before facing me. Is she getting paid for this? Inquired Paul. Mary's jaw dropped. Not to be outdone, Brian chimed in. Will she gain any new skills? I simply grinned. So, when's the next poker game? They murmured to each other for a while. Then Brian asked, Are you interested? No, I replied. When's the next poker game? Catherine, I'm baffled why you're saying you won't return, yet you keep inquiring about the next gathering. Okay, I've had it. Let me lay it out. I retrieved my gym bag and emptied all the envelopes. Tonight, I was about to shatter a couple of marriages, but you know what? I believe they're already on the rocks. I stowed the envelopes back and replaced the bag. Catherine, you tore my heart out and actually enlisted your friends to restrain me while you did it. And you still don't see any wrongdoing? You not only betrayed me, but also shamelessly humiliated me. Clearly, your poker group status means more to you than I do. But the worst part, Catherine, is that these people aren't your friends. Real friends wouldn't subject you to this or allow you to inflict this on yourself. Katie started to interject. No, darling, you mean everything. Take it easy, Catherine. It's my turn now. You didn't even apologize. All you did was rationalize why you should settle your debts. You kept insisting we needed to move past this, yet you never acknowledged any wrongdoing. Even after all this, you still plan to attend poker nights. If you're willing to gamble carnal favors while I'm present, what would you wager when I'm not? Am I supposed to raise another person's child because you lost a bet and someone else impregnated you? We're through. You have a gambling issue. Seek help. I'll consult a lawyer on Monday. If you want your own attorney, go ahead. As far as I'm concerned, you can have almost everything, including your misguided friends. What an idiot you are, Brian remarked. Screw you, Brian, Allison retorted, surprising everyone. He's right about everything. You guys are wrecking his marriage to Katie for your own entertainment. He was on the verge of exposing you, claiming I slept with him, and I don't know why he didn't. You know I did. Henry, can I catch a ride with you? Another awkward silence lingered for about 10 seconds before Mary spoke up. You know what, Paul? I've had it, Mary asserted. I'm tired of carrying all the weight in this relationship. Henry's spot on. You hardly even sit by my side. Back before all this mess, Henry looked up to her. I always wished you'd treat me the way he treated her. It's the first time I've seen them not sitting together, not touching, not holding hands. It really infuriates me that you facilitated all this, Henry, she continued. Last Saturday, when it all went down, I was just as stunned as you were. I honestly thought it was some sick joke because I believe she loved you deeply. I'm truly sorry I didn't speak up then, but perhaps it's better for you to find out now, especially since you don't have children. Can I hitch a ride with you? We departed the house with Katie sobbing uncontrollably, Larry and Sandy bickering over the swing, and Paul and Brian exchanging threats of, "If you don't come home today, don't bother coming back at all." Both girls stormed out, flipping the bird. I dropped off Allison and Mary at Allison's parents' house and returned to my motel. I polished off the remaining hard drinks in the room and devoured the last of the junk food. I eventually drifted off around midnight. The divorce proceeded smoothly. We sold the house and she stashed all the furniture in storage. I got everything I desired from a surprisingly modest house. Allison and Mary split from their spouses, and the three of us maintained a friends with benefits arrangement. Katie has been silent. Frankly, I was let down. I expected her to put up more of a fight, maybe push for counseling. Clearly, marriage meant less to her than it did to me. While I never developed romantic feelings for Mary or Allison individually, the three of us grew very close. A year after the infamous incident, I found myself in the bar Katya and I used to frequent for special occasions. The divorce had been finalized 4 months prior. As I sat there nursing my beer and missing Katya, I sensed someone behind me. I kept my gaze fixed on the wall, hoping they'd leave. I really wasn't in the mood to chat and wished they'd take the hint. "Mind if I join you?" I kept my head down, focusing on my drink. "Sure, go ahead, have a seat." "A nice guy like you, I'm surprised you're here by yourself." "Well, I usually hang out with 2 wonderful friends, but they're on a double date." "Funny you mention friends. Turns out mine weren't as great as I thought. I happened upon a couple of girls who mentioned there'd be a handsome, kind-hearted guy flying solo at this bar. Figured I'd come introduce myself. I'm Katie." I chuckled and played along. "Pleasure to meet you, Katie. I'm Henry." "Why are you here alone? Celebrating something?" "No, nothing to celebrate. I'm a relationship failure. Couldn't prevent my wife from cheating, so we divorced. My 2 closest friends are with other people. And you?" "Well, maybe I'm a failure too. Had the world's best boyfriend, loved me deeply, but I hurt him terribly. Cheated, and he divorced me. Did he do what was best for him or for me? Let's start with him." "Not sure. You'd have to ask him. People say he's unhappy all the time." "And you?" "It's been tough. His divorce plunged me into the darkest period of my life. Forced me to examine myself closely. Didn't like what I found. Started dependency counseling then and have kept at it since. My husband saw it coming, tried to warn me, but I didn't listen. In that sense, divorce was probably inevitable. My dependency would have eventually eroded his love for me. I never stopped loving you, Kat. Couldn't." "I know, Henry. I get it. First, it's nice to hear you call me Katie or Kat again, not Catherine. I came to explain my actions and assure you it's not your fault. I know you know this, but I needed to say it. That poker night, I was sure I'd win. When I didn't, I paid up. Didn't even see it as cheating. Like a handshake. I worried they might ostracize me from the group. I never viewed it as a gamble on our marriage since I never imagined you'd leave. It never crossed my mind. I anticipated your anger, followed by forgiveness, seeing it as my duty. I believed you'd understand my need to honor my word. Frankly, I didn't think it was a big deal. But now I realize it's the most despicable, repulsive thing I've ever done to someone. Back then, I couldn't comprehend your seemingly irrational behavior. During therapy, when I recounted the fight and how you insisted I document it, the doctor praised your approach, calling you a genius. She expressed surprise at the endurance of our marriage. She also clarified why you were so fixated on the next poker night. Just so you're aware, there haven't been any more poker nights. I haven't touched a deck of cards since that evening, and I never will again. I haven't communicated with any of those guys since a couple of weeks after our argument. How's Sandy holding up? She's doing okay. She and Larry ended up divorcing. Turns out he was a terrible idiot, and she felt too embarrassed to speak up. Eventually, she decided to leave him. Now she's dating a coworker. Henry, you were spot on about everything. I prioritized this foolish poker group over everything else. I loved you wholeheartedly, and I knew you felt the same. I was confident you'd understand and be okay with it. If these people were genuine friends, things wouldn't have spiraled like this. I couldn't resist the pull of being part of that group. Allowing that idiot Mark to do what he did makes me sick with myself. Without your actions, I shudder to think how those games would have evolved. I'm deeply sorry for all the pain I caused you. I genuinely wish you a wonderful life. You deserve it. I'd genuinely like to maintain a friendship with you, but I understand if you're not up for it. I'll leave now before I start blubbering like a child. Give me a call." Katie rose and headed toward the door. "Hey, Kat," I called after her. She paused but didn't turn back. "Yes, Henry?" Her shoulders trembled with tears. "Have you eaten dinner yet?" "No, Henry, not yet," she replied, still facing away. I rose, approached her, wrapped my arm around her shoulders, guided her head to my shoulder, and led her to the door. "Let's go grab a proper dinner." Katie and I rekindled our relationship, and a few months later, we moved back in together. 9 months after that, we remarried at the courthouse, opting to keep the same anniversary date. True to her word, Katie gave up gambling entirely, even abstaining from joking bets. While some might say, once a cheater, always a cheater, I don't believe that applies to Katie. I see her actions through the lens of her dependency, understanding that it led her to behavior she wouldn't otherwise engage in. Her motives weren't to shame me or seek another partner. She was battling her dependency. The guys from the poker group remained friends, except for Terry, who distanced himself. As for Mark, I never heard from him again. It seems he chose to leave town to avoid further discussion on the matter. Katie and I maintain friendships with Sandy, Allison, and Mary. Sandy has also quit playing poker. They've all agreed to be godmothers to our son.